Hi everyone, welcome to Low Carb Breakthrough. My name is Naz, and I'd like to share with you today how I went from a size 22 to a size 10, losing 30 kilograms in my 40s. So I was very overweight. I was unhappy with what I looked like and what I felt like. And I had tried every kind of diet. I tried pills, shakes, seeds. I'd been to a weight loss clinic. And yes, I would lose weight, but I would eventually put it all back on. In August 2016, I saw a photo of myself that was taken at an outing with colleagues. And I looked at that photo and I actually didn't recognize myself. I was very disappointed. I couldn't believe that I had gotten that big. And I knew that I needed to give myself one last try, one last chance. And I did. I decided that I needed to change the way that I was doing things because with diets and shakes and pills, there's a lot of restriction and it relies on willpower. And yes, everything in the beginning does take an element of willpower. But the difference for me when I decided in August 2016 that I am going to make a change to try the low carbohydrate lifestyle, low carb, back then it was called low carb, high fat. Now, it sounds counterintuitive to be eating high fat when you're already fat. But it blew my mind because the moment I started adopting the low carb way of eating, what started to happen is my appetite started regulating, my cravings started dissipating. I no longer needed the so much bread and rice and pasta and sugar. Things actually started changing within my body. Back then, I didn't realize that because of my age, I was 44 when I started. A year prior, I had had a total hysterectomy. So my estrogen levels had dropped completely because I was put into surgical menopause. And so there were lots of things happening in my body. I was on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and that's estrogen. And I wasn't sure about estrogen. I wasn't sure about HRT. I took it because I thought, I didn't know much else. I was scared of it because I'd heard horror stories about it causing breast cancer, etc. But I continued to take the estrogen. In hindsight, what I've learned over the years is that the way I started eating low carb, healthy fat was actually supporting my hormones. After some time of eating low carb, my body really started adjusting because my brain, the part of your brain called the epistat, which is responsible for hunger and appetite, that part of your brain actually gets reset. And I explain all of this in my course, Low Carb Breakthrough, which I'll talk more about a little bit later on. But I really just wanted to tell you that if you're a woman in midlife, between your 40s and 60s, and you're struggling to lose weight, and you feel you've tried everything, but the weight is just not budging, it's most likely because the way you're eating now is not supporting the change that's happening with your hormones in your body. So we have four major hormones. There are many hormones, but I'm going to just talk very quickly about the four major hormones: estrogen, progesterone, insulin, and cortisol. Estrogen is the hormone that we can think of as our feminine powerhouse. It's responsible for the strength and the density of our bones, for the quality of our hair, our skin, our nails. It's also responsible for our libido, as well as our general energy and our sense of vitality. So when estrogen starts dropping, a lot starts to change. Often the first hormone to start dropping is progesterone, and that can happen as early as your late 30s. Progesterone supports estrogen. And so when these two hormones go out of kilter, you don't generally feel yourself. So a lot was happening in my body at the time, which I didn't understand. I started researching hormones later on, but I'm so glad that I did embark on a low carb lifestyle because it was actually supporting my hormones. And you all know cortisol, known as the stress hormone. When cortisol spikes, it can make weight loss very, very difficult. And there are even certain foods that tend to increase cortisol in your body. Coffee, for example, too much coffee can increase cortisol. And then the hormone insulin. Now, I always thought insulin was just for diabetics. I thought diabetics needed to be aware, either diabetic type 1, those who don't have enough insulin, they need to inject themselves, and then diabetics type 2 who have too much insulin and it's not behaving properly. So they need to cut back on their sugar and their carbs, etc. But no, insulin impacts all of us, particularly as midlife women. When our estrogen starts to decline, our insulin levels generally stop operating the way that it used to. And that can be a problem because the process in which insulin works in our bodies is when we eat particularly high carbohydrate food, it causes glucose to form in our bloodstream. And when glucose is in our bloodstream, insulin comes out of the pancreas. It then captures that glucose. It puts it into our muscle and our liver cells for energy. It converts it into glycogen. And the excess glucose, which is quite a lot, especially if you eat a lot of carbohydrates, it causes a lot of glucose. It captures that, the excess, and it puts it into our fat cells where it's converted into fat. And it gets stored for the ice age, which we know never comes because we continue eating and feeding ourselves, and more glucose is created and therefore more insulin. So when insulin is high, our fat storage is high. When insulin is balanced, we go into fat burning mode. And this is how low carb really helped me. Within the first 5 to 6 months, I had lost 17 kilos already. And it made such a huge difference to how I looked and how I felt. It was absolutely remarkable. It completely changed my life. At that point already, I started feeling more energetic and I wanted to start exercising, and I started hula hooping because it was fun. However, I was never really an exercise person. I was never an active person. I wasn't raised that way, unfortunately. And so the exercise wasn't long lived. But what I can tell you, which is the most remarkable thing about the low carb, healthy fat lifestyle, is that I lost all of my weight, 30 kilos, with food alone, focusing just on the food, no exercise. And I have been doing that for the last 8 years. However, a year ago, I started training because I felt that it was time to actually not just focus on the weight loss, but really focus on the strength of my muscles, the tone of my body and muscles, and also definitely longevity. I want to live a long, healthy life. And so all of these things have become really important to me. So aside from the weight loss, my health really became very important to me over the years. And what's happened over time is that my appetite, like I said, and my hunger has completely reset itself and normalized. My cravings have really, really reduced. I must say that occasionally I do still want something sweet. I've always loved sweet things. I've always had a sweet tooth. And the fantastic thing about the low carb, healthy fat way of eating is that I found replacements for many of the things that I like, because often I find when we change the way we eat, we often crave texture. So maybe the texture of bread or the texture of potato, mashed potato, for example. So the texture of things, because we grew up with it and it's comfort food. But when we eat carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, bread, rice, sugar, pasta, cakes, chocolates, sweets, etc., all the things that we love. But what happens is when we eat that, it forms glucose in our blood. And that's where you get the term blood sugar or high blood sugar. So to prevent high blood sugar, insulin is released, captures that glucose, puts it into our cells, stores it in our fat cells as well. And that's how we get fat. That's the story of fat, ladies. So the key is, particularly when we hit our 40s and we we're entering midlife and our hormones are declining. The key is to change the way we eat. And I know it sounds easier said than done, but I promise you that I was a sugar and carb addict. I went from eating now to in 30 minutes time wanting to eat again because my cravings were so out of control, because I didn't know what was happening in my body. The glucose just kept running through my bloodstream. The three main macronutrients that we need for our body, and that is protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And you want to you want to prioritize fat. And when I say fat, I'm talking healthy fats, things like avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, um, cheese, cottage cheese. They're all considered healthy fat. Seed oils, margarine are not healthy fat. Pure butter is. And in my course, Low Carb Breakthrough, I provide you with the food lists, which tells you exactly what are healthy fats, what is good protein, what are good carbohydrates. I also share with you exactly what I did, the exact system that I used to lose 30 kilos and go from a size 22 to a size 10 in midlife. I will include that link down below should you wish to join me on that course. So I also understand that some of you may be fearful and wonder, how are you actually going to give up bread, rice, potatoes, pasta, chips, chocolates, cakes? How are you going to do that? I want to tell you that like I said earlier, I was an absolute addict. And I loved rice so much that I had to have it every single day. I loved bread as well, cakes, sweets, chocolates. And trust me, I was able to give it up. I was able to, and not just give it up from willpower. I retrained myself. I retrained my brain. I retrained my body, and I developed new habits. So biologically, my body changed. The reason is because I started fueling myself differently. So most of us fuel with carbs because when we were young at school, we learned that food pyramid, and the biggest part of the food pyramid at the bottom, the base, is carbohydrates, and then we have protein, and the smallest part on the top of the triangle is fat, because fat is supposed to be dangerous. With low carb, healthy fat, everything gets switched around, and your biggest part in the bottom is healthy fat, and then you have protein, and the smallest part on the top is carbs. So those are your three main macronutrients. And in my course, I teach you exactly how much of each to eat, but it also depends on your body and how you process all of this. Your body will go through a time that it needs to become fat adapted, which means your body needs to learn. You are going to teach your body how to start using fat as fuel. And eventually, once it becomes fat adapted, it's going to recognize that it can burn your own body fat as fuel. Yes, it is absolutely revolutionary. And that is how I lost all of my weight. And now, 30 kilos later, and weight training 3 to 5 days a week just for the last year, I am in a rhythm, and it's just become a way of life for me. It's no longer something that I try to do, it's something that is just part of my life. And I've gotten to a point now where I do eat carbohydrates when I want to, because my body's actually learned moderation. And I know what it's like when you're overweight and your eating's out of control. You don't know moderation. And my body has learned that over time, and yours will too. You just need to fuel it differently. Your body now, in your 40s and 50s, needs a different way. It needs a different system, and it needs to be fueled differently to what it needed when we were in our 20s and 30s. So I created an audio guide called Hormone Clarity. It's a free guide. It's a 30-minute audio guide, which you will find on my channel as well, which you are welcome to listen to, because that will really give you a good overview of what happens in our bodies as women in midlife, so that you can understand what happens hormonally. Because I believe that if you understand those key hormonal shifts that actually happen within our bodies, you then very clearly begin understanding why switching to a low carbohydrate way of eating really, really supports our bodies. So you probably have heard of low carb. I mean, it's been quite a phenomenon, in the world over the last few years. My course, Low Carb Breakthrough, is the exact roadmap and system that I used, including all the tips and the lessons that I personally learned over time. So it's just short circuiting everything that you need to go and scurry around to learn, to get together, to understand, and to learn through trial and error. And I take all of that overwhelm away for you. And I give it to you in a short course in about 2 hours. You will know everything that you need to know. I provide you with a quick start guide for those of you who don't know anything about low carb. I provide you with food lists. I share with you how to adapt your favorite meals to low carb meals. I give you all of the food swaps that you can make. So I provide you with some recipes on how to make bread alternatives, mashed potato alternatives, rice alternatives, and also a few of my absolute favorite recipes. Having a sweet tooth, for example, I needed to initially have, quite a bit of sweet things on hand. So I switched obviously from refined cane sugar to low carb sugars like xylitol, erythritol, stevia, and I was able to create sweet treats for myself that kept my sweet tooth at bay in those initial few weeks when I still wanted and craved for those sweet things. So I provide you with all of that. I also talk to you about what you can expect in the first 2 weeks or so. Your body sometimes goes through, an adaptation process where it needs some extra support. I tell you, what to do there, how to help yourself during that period, and also just how to get ready for your new lifestyle. So it's a practical step-by-step guide on exactly how I started and maintained and lost 30 kilos and dropped from a size 22 to a size 10 in midlife. So if you'd like to join me, I look forward to helping you on your journey. Please go to my store. It's at www.stan.store/low carb breakthrough, and I hope to see you there.
Come sit for a while, let's breathe and pause, let's reset and restart. Let's share what we've learned, what's worked, and how to stay true to ourselves. Here we honor ourselves and our journey to health, inner peace and longevity. Thank you for coming, you're beautiful.